Hi, this is Steve Bookbinder, your sales coach. Today, we're going to talk about how the world has changed, as you've probably noticed. We're selling in a post-coronavirus world, although we're still in a current coronavirus world. And I think we have to look at the place that we're in now as both someplace we've been about the last 6 months. We've been growing into it, and it may be the new normal. And I don't really think we're going to go back completely to the way we used to be, but certainly things are at a state right now that are a little different. And I think it's extra challenging for all workers, maybe particularly so for salespeople. And I want to address in today's webinar the things that you could do, given where we are in the world, where your customers are in the world, that'll help you become more effective, more impactful, and have a more successful and happier career. I'm going to break down the topic into parts that'll help us unpack and strategize and come up with the right tactics, and you'll understand where I'm going when I do it this way. First of all, let's acknowledge that it's just harder than it's ever been, and there are just certain realities to that and certain things we need to think about. We also always need this, but in particular right now, we need to be our own coach, but we also need to be our own cheerleader. I'll explain that as we go on. I'm going to talk to you about managing your time. I've kind of broken that into two sections: managing your time part A and part B. I also have broken down the concept of think like a marketer, and you're going to see we're going to talk about think like a marketer, understand what the customer's buying journey is, and write like a marketer. You're going to see all that. We're also going to talk about account-based selling, and we're going to break that into two parts. We're going to optimize your cadence. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with what that term means. We're going to break that down. What you're going to see is even more important than how well written one email is, or one in-mail might be if you're using LinkedIn. There's a series of messages that you're going to send. And that series, the timing, is the cadence. We're going to talk about how to optimize it. In fact, we're going to break down the word optimize. Echo selling. This is a concept based on a book I'm writing now, which I believe is the new way that we have to sell, given that the customer has so dramatically changed. And I'm going to talk about the value and the process of investing in yourself. I'm going to leave you with some grab and go. So at the very end, even if you don't take any notes at all, I'm going to summarize everything I've said into a bunch of bullet points so that you could take what I'm telling you today and start working on it starting later today and tomorrow. Ready? Here we go. Let's look at this person climbing a mountain. That is my image of what we're going through right now. There is no question that it is hard. It's hard for you. It's hard for your customers. I've spoken to some people in the business who've said to me, even if I have a customer, I can't install. I can't get the customer to meet me. We can't be in the same building at the same time. So there's some obvious problems with prospecting and having meetings, both with prospects and with customers. And so there's a bunch of things that we need to think about, and I'm going to summarize them into three kinds of things. The first is you have to reinvent yourself. Whenever there's a problem, I've been around long enough to see economic downturns. In fact, I began this particular company. I launched this company in the middle of the last recession. If you've been around long enough, that's exactly what happens in the world. There are high points and there are low points, and there are just times that the wind is at your back, and there are times the wind is in your face. Right now, it's one of those times. And whenever that happens, we've got to get control. And the way we get control is we reinvent ourselves. We change the external environment, we change the internal environment. So to change your external environment, and I'm not telling you something that I think you should do, but I'm telling you something that I personally have done, and I found this to be very helpful. First, I look around the office, my office. Now, I've worked out of my home for most of the last few years. So working virtually is not something new to me. But when you look around, you see all the messaging, all the books that are on the shelf, all the things that are in front of your face. And I want you to change that messaging. I want you to make it more positive. I want you to take down the things that are not contributing to positive. I want you to put positive messages up. Now, that might sound hokey, but I'll tell you what, when you put up things that are personally significant to you, I'll read an article, I'll see something and I go, oh, that's a great line. That's a great quote. That's a great thought. That's a great observation. I will literally cut it out. I'll write it up. I'll pin it up and I'll tape it up and I'll put it right in front of my face. I've changed the world around me. So every time I look up, I'm in the middle of a meeting, I happen to look up, I just glance over and I see that note or I see that sign or I see that picture. It helps. So that's how you reinvent the external what you're taking in around you and typically in your office. But internally, what that means for salespeople is that we need to change our thought process. And you know what our thought process is? Getting prospects and coming up with some strategy to turn prospects into customers and turning customers into happy customers, into referrals and that sort of thing. And it basically comes down to auditing and making a list. Let's make a list. Let's start by making that list of let's take all of the names we know and let's put them into A, B, C, and D categories. A being people who are decision makers, who like you and have money, have a budget, they're inclined to like you. Maybe you've already in the past have established a great relationship with them. They're your A's. And then I want you to have B's, C's, and D's. D's would be the people with unknown buying power, unknown decision-making ability, and no relationship with you. And B's and C's are somewhere in the middle of that. I want you to be honest with yourself, and I want you to come up with an actual list of A, B, C, and D. And just the act of doing that will start to help you feel in control in a world we feel out of control. We have now an inventory of what we have to work with. From that list, we're going to make money. From that list, we're going to develop our time management plans. From that list, we're going to develop our marketing strategies, and everything is coming out of that list. And of course, that list, the A, B, and C, D list, will change over time as we start to approach these people and try to develop relationships and get to know them all better. And as we start to think about doing that, we need to think about adapting and adopting. This is a mantra I'm always repeating to myself. What do I mean by that? Well, there are some skills like negotiating that have been around since the beginning of time. Since the first time anybody sold anything to anybody, there must have been some negotiation. And you know what? Skills in sales they deteriorate over time. If you don't actively practice and work and improve your skills, they will actually get worse. So if you say to me, no, I know how to negotiate because I've been doing it a long time. No, that'd be like saying I used to train for the Olympics, so therefore I must be ready right now if the Olympics were today. No, you actually get worse. You don't realize you're getting worse, but you get worse. So if you're not actively working on it, and you see this, by the way, in sports. What do you see in sports? The athletes are constantly working out, even though they've been playing since they were 5. You see this in music. Concert pianists and rock stars that are the greatest guitar players of all time. They've been practicing since they were 4 years old, and and if they stop practicing, they get worse. So we need to do that. We, you and me, salespeople have more skills than anybody. So let's look at all of the skills that we need, and let's look at the skills that we think we're good at. How can we get better at the skills that we're good at? And remember, it's not only about competing against yourself. It's not only, gee, I'm pretty good at something. I used to not be good at it, and I'm great at it. You are up against other salespeople who are trying to get to your prospects, your customers, and they're using the same kinds of skills you are. So you not only have to be good, you've got to be better than they are when they're playing the same game you are, using the same skills. So I not only have to be good at negotiating, I have to be better than other salespeople who are trying to compete against me when they're negotiating. So that's a case of adapting to the modern era. For example, negotiating is a great skill to have, but it is played one way when you're in the same room with somebody and you can see them and you can see their body language. Played a completely different way if you're doing this on a video meeting, a phone meeting, or by email, or any other way. So we need to adapt to the modern world. But also we need to adopt. We need new skills. There are skills now that, I like to tell people in 6 months from now, they're going to invent something that if you don't know how to do, you're not sure how to use, you're going to already be behind the 8 ball. There are skills that using today, like Zoom, for example, that people didn't even know anything about a few months ago. Now everybody's an expert on Zoom. So we have to not only get good at things that are new, things that that you can't have been doing for 30 years because they just invented it, but we've got to be very good at learning how to be good at things they're just inventing. And it feels like they're inventing things all the time now, many of which we need to use and be an expert in right away. So we need to be good at getting good at things. So we need to think about adapting and adopting. So you really have to do a very good and honest analysis of your own skills. How good are you at any skill? Can you get better? How good are you at the skills that you're bad at? How good are you at the skills that you don't know anything about? And for a lot of us, it's how to use sales and marketing technologies. Are we good at those things? How much better can we be? And then finally, tracking. Tracking psychologically gets us from a world where we're out of control to we're at the beginnings of control. The moment you start to track anything, you start to take control. Psychologically, it's huge. But what I want to show you is there's three particular things that if you start to track, you will not only improve because tracking causes improvement, but you will improve the things you need for you to make more sales. Earlier, I said to you, you've got to be your own coach and your own cheerleader. Let's break that down to coach first. When you're your own coach, the first thing I want you to do is I want you to look at your pipeline. Why? Because, it's misleading to think that sales, professional sales, is about selling. Any technique done in any way will eventually produce a sale. But professional sales isn't about eventually getting somebody to buy something from you. Professional sales about hitting goals, and oh, by the way, those goals keep going up. So sales, really, professional sales, is about hitting ever-rising goals. Where do your sales come from? They come from your pipeline. You want to change your sales, you first have to change your pipeline. Now, when you're looking to change your pipeline, there's really three things I want you to do. The first thing is I want you to look at your pipeline. And I want you to scratch your head. And I want you to ask yourself, what am I looking for? Because I tell you what, I have trained 50,000 salespeople all over the world. In every country across multiple verticals. I've had people pull out their pipelines, and I've gone through this drill, and I've asked them, when you look at your pipeline, what do you look at? What do you look for? And most people, as if answering for the first time, never really gave it much thought. They go, well, when I look at my pipeline, I'm kind of reminded. I'm reminded who to talk to. It's like a tickler list. I go, oh yeah, I almost forgot about that company. And that's great, and that's wonderful, but that's not the main thing. In fact, here's the main thing. When you look at your pipeline, the very first thing you're supposed to look at is you're supposed to ask yourself, what is my pipeline supposed to look like? Now that I have this idea of what I call an ideal pipeline in my head, how do I compare? Let me do a gap analysis between my actual pipeline and what I think my pipeline is supposed to look like, because no pipeline is inherently good nor bad. It's just what it is, but it's good or bad in comparison to what it's supposed to look like. So we need to first have that notion of what would it look like if everything was going fine. And in today's world, when everything is going fine, we need to recognize that our closing ratios are probably worse. And so whatever number of prospects we used to think was sufficient, whatever number of first appointments we used to think were enough to give us the prospects, to give us the sales, that's probably actually not the right number anymore. So we need to kind of look at our ratios in that way. But let's look at our ideal pipeline. The second thing we need to do is recognize that there's a human tendency to want to put things in the pipeline and never take things out, and to look at things optimistically, and to talk ourselves into why something might possibly happen. We come up with these stories. You know why I'm optimistic about that? But what we need to do is come up with objective inspection standards. So if we could do that, if we could say, for example, let's put everything against these two standards. How old is the sale versus my normal selling cycle? And do I have a scheduled next step? Not, well, my next step is I'm going to call them in a month. No, do they have your name in their calendar? If they're not even putting your name in their calendar, if they're not even reserving time to talk to you, they're even less likely to send you a signed contract or a check. So let's use the objective but cruel criteria of next steps and also selling cycle. The number one buying signal is how long is this sale been in progress. And the longer it is, the less likely you're going to get a sale. But if it's longer than your average sale, and I'm not saying every sale is an average sale, but if we take a big sale, how long do your big sales take? How long do your small sales take? And have we adjusted that for a post-corona virus world? So maybe in today's world, things take longer because they just take longer. Nothing inherently bad about that. But if we compare the sale we're working on to the sales that are similar to it, if our sale is older or we don't have a next step, let's not count on it. So now let's clean up our pipeline. Let's learn to put things in. Let's also learn to take things out or move things back to an earlier stage. And then finally, let's learn to strategize. The fact that I could say to you, let's take out of our pipeline things that are too old or don't have a next step. Yes, it's depressing when you take it out, but that doesn't mean it's permanently out. That means that it obligates us to say, okay, now that I know that it's not in my pipeline, now that I know that it's not as far advanced as I thought, what strategy can I use to get it back on track? And I want to look at that. I want to look at my ratios, and ratios give us a chance. When you look at ratios, if you've got great ratios, you can always find a way to improve. If you have terrible ratios, you can actually improve better. So, the more you look at ratios of things you're not good at, the more improvement you'll see. And I think improving and seeing yourself improving is very self-motivating. But the coach is always going to try to find things you could do better. Looking at your ratios automatically causes you unconsciously to find things you can improve. All of a sudden you start to say to yourself, why is it 1 out of 10 of something that I do happens? How can I get it to work any better? So you'll just unconsciously make a number of choices. And as you're optimizing, what you'll realize is that not every single change actually makes things work better. But every single change is a step in the chain of events that eventually get things to go better. So improvement is not linear. Sometimes you got to change 9 things before the 10th thing finally works. But in the process of trying to change your ratio, you change the focus from, I have no control in this evil world, that things are really hard, to, I have total control over the things I'm about to do. But if we're only coaching ourselves, we're going to be depressed. We also have to be our own cheerleader. And for that, we need to look at benchmarks. Benchmarks work very differently than ratios. Ratios, you're always going, how come I'm only 1 out of 3? How could I be 1.5 out of 3? But benchmarks, that's a standard that you say to yourself every day or every week or every month or every quarter, I'm going to do this one thing. And if you have a benchmark that's hittable and doable but challenging, now the real measure is streaks. For example, let's say you set a benchmark that every day I'm going to make at least 1 phone call. I'm not going to end the day until I make 1 call to 1 new person. Well, that's a very great benchmark because you can totally do that. And by the way, at the end of a year has 200 or so work days, 200 calls to new people that you've never spoken to before. That benchmark will likely produce at least 1 sale. But the pride you're going to have, you look at that picture before of the guy climbing the mountain, looking up at the top of the mountain is daunting, but looking back to where you've been, that's the encouraging thing. That's your coach and your cheerleader working together to encourage you and to push you. The only resource that you and I really have in sales is time. We have about 2,000 work hours. How we use that time changes the results we're going to get. So I want you to think about a bunch of things. And I've broken time management into 2 parts, A and B. The first I want you to think about is seasons of selling. What do I mean by that? When you get a sale in late December or January, that's a very different sale than the sale you get in June. Let me explain. What kind of a sale do you get in December or January? That's a sale that you got because the company put your name in the budget and budgeted for you and finally got the sale. For that to happen, you had to be in the budget discussions, which happened in October, November, which means you had to start talking to them about a budget in August and September, which means you had to start to market to them and get to know them and maybe test things along the way, starting somewhere between January and August. And finally, you were in budget discussions and you got that sale in December, January, maybe February. Well, the June sale, very different sale. That's an incremental sale. In the middle of the year, they realized they had a little bit more money or they had a certain need that just came up, and it's a very different kind of a sale. So what we need to think about is the sales cycle from the point of view of the seasons of selling. I want to get sales in February, in January, but to do that, I need to work right now to make sure I'm in the budget discussions. But I also want sales in March, April, May, and June. Those are going to be incremental sales I need to get from other kinds of people. So I may have to go to top level people to be in the budget conversations and lower level people to get in that incremental conversation. How many months in advance of that do I need to start marketing? I need to be thinking about that all the time. So rather than focus on the impossible to control month that I want to close something, let's focus on the it's all about you controlling month they have to begin the process of getting a sale for that month. So right now, if I think about trying to get a sale for September and it's September, it's going to be very frustrating if I can't get that sale. But if I'm working in September and October on the sales I'm working on for March and April and May, I'm going to be very encouraged that I started that now, right now. In fact, I'll tell you something. If I don't start it right now, today is the last day to get that sale that I'm going to eventually get in March and April. So let's think about the seasons that you want to close and how much in front of that you need to be. We also need to just in general think about time principles. I want to share a couple of time principles with you. One is schedule everything you want to get to. The other day I had a dental appointment. I didn't really want to have a dentist put a live drill in my mouth. I actually want to get together with some friends. But if I don't have an appointment with the friends, but I do have an appointment with the dentist, the drill is going to be in my mouth more likely than me getting together with my friends. Let's schedule everything we really want to get to. Let's align our time with our goals. So many people have said to me, oh, I want to write a book. And I'll ask, have you written the draft yet? No. How long have you been thinking about the book? 2 years. Have you had a table of contents? No. Have you put any work this week, this month, this year against this book project? No. Well, that's why you didn't write a book, because you have this idea, this goal of writing a book, but you didn't put any time against it. Make sure you align your time with your goals. Schedule the most important things that you can't not get to off hours, meaning this. If you really want to make sure that you work out, do it before 9, do it after 5. Why? Because in sales, the period of 9 to 5 is sometimes not within our control. We're at the mercy of customers and prospects who make our schedule for us. They decide when they're going to meet. They move the appointments around. But if I really, really, really want to get to things, I have to schedule them before 9 or after 5. So think about that. Also think about avoiding multitasking and instead cluster together similar activities. Why? If you do one thing, and then go into something else, then go into something else, you don't get any momentum. And I'll give you 3 things that salespeople always have to do. Find a lead, contact the lead either by calling or emailing, and then writing it all up into your CRM. Most people try to do that in one contiguous flow of activity. That's a multitasking. Let me do all 3 things at once. You're much better at getting yesterday's leads, getting the leads you need for today, yesterday. You're much better about thinking ahead. Never end the day without getting the next day's leads before you end the day. When you do it that way, all of a sudden you'll get 30 leads at the end of the day. Now watch this though. Pick the right starting point. See, this is inexplicable, but you know it's true. When you do things, changes how long it lasts. So if I said to you, I want you to get tomorrow's leads ready today, and I want you to start the project at 10 a.m. Well, we start the project at 10 a.m. You know what? It could take you 4 hours to come up with tomorrow's leads. But on the other hand, if I said to you, I want you to get tomorrow's leads today, but I want you to start at 4:45. You know what happens? All of a sudden, you got the whole project done in 15 minutes. Why? I don't know. It just works that way. So because of that, you don't want to spend too much time on something like getting leads. You want to and then run out of time to call the leads. So pick the right starting time. Also pick the right number of minutes for every task. In other words, never do anything work-related without first allocating the right number of minutes. Why do you want to do that? Because you might otherwise inadvertently spend too much time on things that are not revenue producing or just simply not worth it. And then finally, let's not forget about the most important thing of all, which is time working on your business. You know, let me distinguish working in your business from working on your business. You're working in your business when you're calling people, when you're writing proposals, when you're filing, when you're doing admin work. That's all the kind of work you have to do as part of your job. But when you spend, and I really want you to do this at least once a week, that time where you're looking at your ratios, you're looking at your benchmarks, you're looking at your pipeline, you're scratching your head, you're deciding how can I strategize to more effectively accomplish my goals. That's working on your business. Most people find that painful. They don't know what to do. We generally avoid things we don't like doing, and we gravitate toward things we do. So if you don't like doing it, or you don't know what to do, you just don't do it. I want you to develop a meeting agenda with yourself, starting with scheduling a meeting with yourself to work on your business. I'm not finished with time management. Yeah, let's look at these things. Here's a concept. People talk about it's not about working hard, it's about working smart. It's not about being busy, it's being productive. And that all sounds great. But here's the reality. Guess what? When you're busy, you're faster, you move faster. And when you're not busy, you slow down. You look at somebody's calendar, and that calendar's got every hour is filled with another appointment. The person is running around at 100 miles an hour. They're doing everything at 100-mile-an-hour intensity. But if you remove most of those things, you got a couple of appointments on your calendar, you just slow down because you don't have to move fast. For that reason, salespeople are always better when they're moving and doing everything at 100-mile-an-hour intensity. Now, you can't keep up 100-mile-an-hour intensity all day long. So what you want to do is you want to schedule everything. Make sure your calendar is filled with appointments, whether those appointments are with yourself or with a prospect or with a customer, but I want you to find a way to keep yourself busy. And one of the things I want you to busy yourself with is something that you would have been busy with if you were physically in the office, which is to spend time with your coworkers. We underappreciate the value of the water cooler. You walk up to somebody, and it's not only important to blow off steam or to have a laugh or to share the frustrations or the challenges that you both share, but you know what you end up doing? You end up sharing with each other best practices. Sometimes you're sharing your best practices. Sometimes you're picking some new idea up. You walk past somebody's office and all of a sudden a question occurs to you. You wouldn't have thought of it, but all of a sudden you see them and go, oh, I have a question. And you know what? You just learned something about your product or your industry or your customer or yourself or your company or something that's going to help you in some way. So I want you to think about making appointments with your coworkers. And one of the things that I want you to think about doing is using your coworkers as part of your preparation. So let me just say that again. If you've got a meeting with a customer, you also need to set a different block of time to prepare for that meeting. And sometimes that preparation involves research or writing a document or a thing that you're going to present. But some of that time is role playing with your coworkers because the hard part about a sales meeting, talking and listening, is showing somebody and answering questions and asking questions and thinking about what they're saying and being in the moment and thinking about the next steps and all the many things all at once while you're under pressure, while you're trying to do this for all the meetings you have in a certain week or a certain day. Doing things under pressure is harder. That's why you want to role play. Role play practices the art of doing it in front of other people. And I'll show you how I want you to do this. I mean, there's many ways you could role play. But if you role play, pull two coworkers aside. So there's three of you. You play the customer because you know best of all how that customer is going to react, what they're likely to say, the objections they're likely to bring up, the questions they're likely to ask. Let your salesperson or let one of the salespeople friends, your coworkers, be the salesperson in the role play and have the third person be the observer. Because what'll happen is that third person will hear things that neither of the two of you heard, will see things that neither of the two of you saw. And as a result, as you talk about what you did, you're giving yourself a chance to rehearse the meeting. And you know what? Maybe it'll take you 4 or 5 times to get that conversation right in rehearsal. But then when you finally get together with the real customer in real life, you're going to be so much better off. It's hard to make appointments. It's harder now than ever. We can't let any of them slip through our fingers. We need to be exactly right, at our best, playing our A game every time. Role playing is the way to get there. I want you to think like a marketer. We're going to break this down a couple of ways. First, the who, where, what. What do I mean by that? Marketers think about who they're trying to reach. Who's the market? Where are they? Where are they when they're not talking to me? Do they go online? If so, what websites? Where do they go? Do they go to social media? And by the way, social media isn't just LinkedIn, isn't just Facebook or Twitter. It's also newsletters, blogs, it's industry associations, that the industry association that they belong to. And what is the content? What will catch their eye? So you and I need to think like that. And we need to think of it in terms of relevance. When I send somebody a message, I want it to be relevant for them. And in the world of marketing, relevance specifically means this. There is no particular piece of content that's inherently relevant. It's relevant based on the mindset of the buyer. And the buyer is in essentially one of three places of the process, in the process of buying. They're at the so-called top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel. Top of the funnel means that they are qualified, but they're not looking. Middle of the funnel means that they're qualified and they're starting to look, they're starting to shop, but they're nowhere near making a decision. And bottom of the funnel means they're ready to take an action, ready to make a decision. Well, we don't know where our leads are, where our prospects maybe mentally are. So therefore, we need to we need to imagine what they might be thinking about and create content that's relevant for them. And then finally, if we really want to think like a marketer and really want people to think differently of us, then let's get involved with professional and civic and religious organizations that are relevant, so that we literally spend quality time with people who get to see us at our best, see us helping people. What a great way to set yourself up to be referred when people know you and like you and trust you. That overcomes, it's so hard to build that trust in the sales process. So much easier if you get involved. And not only be helping your community, and you'll be helping the team of people that you're working with, but you'll be helping yourself. It's a win-win-win if you get involved like that. In the old days, before the internet, people bought differently than they do now. But in today's world, I want you to look at this drawing. This describes the buying process, and it not only takes us from awareness and then finding them through search and looking at articles and educating ourselves and finally buying something, but then post-buying, people compare their expectations with their experiences. And that's what leads them to buy a second time or refer people. So let's understand that buying journey. Now let's apply that buying journey to how we're going to communicate with them. If you're going to send people emails, if you're going to communicate with people on social media, which I encourage you to do, one of the ripple effects of that is you're going to drive people to your page, your profile. So first, make sure that your profile, which is essentially a website about you, is professional, is complete, is impressive, says about you what you want people to know about you. Then you're ready for social selling. And by the way, social selling online is great. If you social sell first, if you reach people through social media first, then send them an email, they're more likely to open the email. If you don't, they won't. Watch. Social selling is like walking into a party. You wouldn't walk over to a party, meet a total stranger, and start sales pitching them. What you would do is you just try to connect with them first. Then you see if they will engage with you. Then maybe over time, maybe the second or third time you meet them, you would try to convert them. And convert, I'm using that in the online sense, meaning get them to take an action you want them to take, which is usually to schedule an appointment with you. So let's think about connect, engage, convert as three separate steps. Let's not try to meet people and try to sell them all in the same step. That just turns people off. But let's get our social selling messaging, which means that we're reaching out to people, we're asking them to connect with us, we're posting stuff. And if you post things, the people that just connected with you are most likely going to see it. Let's go to the newsletters and the blogs and the industry thought leaders that our customers follow, and let's go to those websites and those newsletters and those blogs, and let's post our own comments there, so our customers, when they go there, will see us. And then finally, email. Let's make sure we're thinking like a marketer, and we're sending out waves of emails. And the emails, of course, we don't know if they're at the top or the middle or the bottom of the funnel. So we're going to create different email templates. Let me break that down a little bit further for you. If I send everybody the same email, it's very efficient, not very effective. If I do a personal note to every single person based on research, it's very effective, but not very efficient. So I need to find the right blend. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to gather up my leads into similar groups that share qualities, that I could put them in one group. And I'm going to create templates against that group. So I've got one template for this group of people, this group of leads. That's a very great way to blend efficient and effective. And then finally, if I start to change the way I personalize my templates and make my templates exactly right for each group, I'm more likely going to see a change in my conversion rate. Why do I tell you this? Because the average person writes one email and convinces themselves that it's great, loads it up with a whole bunch of thoughts about what they would like if they were the customer. Of course, you're not the customer, but that's what you do. And you think, okay, well, that should work. And what you really want to use is data and not gut to make that decision. Your conversion rate data. How many emails did you send? How many people agreed? That's the acid test of how good or effective your emails really are, your templates really are. Let's also know that let's send some of our emails with the assumption that the person is at the top of the funnel, then some at the middle of the funnel. I like to actually start assuming that they're at the bottom of the funnel. Why? Because if I take that approach, that means that I'm assuming that they're ready to buy now. Then with the fewest number of words, I could see whether or not they would try to engage with me. And if so, I could move on. But if they say to me, if they don't respond to that first email, then I make my second email more tailored to a middle of the funnel person. And if they don't respond to that, my next email is for somebody in the top of the funnel, because maybe that's what will be more relevant. They will engage with you if they find your content relevant. And you know what? Whenever you write something, that's only one way you could have written it. So you might want to think about A/B tests. So let's take our lists, have A, B, or ABC templates, and measure our conversion rate. That's the best way to make sure you're communicating in the most effective way. Let's also break it down and look at it another way. Let's take this list and let's not only have a list of people who are inbound leads, and so many of us have inbound lead programs, but let's look at how many people are the people that we want to reach. Who are the people we really want to reach? Whether they're inbound leads or not, you already know who you want to reach. So let's make that list. Let's create what I call a buying rationale, which is this. If you do research about them and you put yourselves in their shoes, knowing what you now know about them and about your service and the value you bring to companies like them and people like them, how and why should they buy from you? What should they be thinking about? Let's put that compelling buying rationale in our heads together so we could communicate that in our email. If you're going after people, especially people, account-based selling doesn't mean you waited for an inbound lead. It means you targeted somebody. So even if we can't come up with a compelling buying rationale, how can we expect them to do so? Let's hit them with that compelling buying rationale. And if we do, we should see them engage with us. But we also need to go one more step with account-based selling, which is to anticipate objections, which isn't a bad thing. Actually, it's a good thing. If I reach out to you and I say to you, I want you to think about buying from me, and here's why, and you give me an objection, the objection actually says to me, you were thinking about what I just told you. If you don't have an objection, it means you didn't really give it that much thought. Well, I'd rather somebody was giving it much more thought, because that says to me, you're engaging with me as opposed to dismissing me. So don't misinterpret objections, but let's anticipate what they're going to object to, what their objections might be, and let's work out the turnaround so that we're ready. The more confident you are, the more ready you are, especially for the negatives, especially for the challenging parts of conversations, the more confident you will be. We talked about sending emails and sending in-mails, and I said to you that if you communicate with people socially first, they're more likely going to reach with you by email. And then if they communicate with you by email, they'll more likely take your call when you call them. So what you want to do is you want to develop a cadence. Now, what does that really mean? Well, if I call you and you don't respond to me, and I call you again every single day for the next 10 days, eventually I'm going to really annoy you. So I want to develop a combination of change my messaging, change my channel being social, email, and phone, and change the timing between each type of message. So what you're seeing on this drawing is an illustration of a way you can do that. So this is in this case, we took a list. We decided that we're going to create content in 1 month that's bottom of the funnel, then middle of the funnel, then top of the funnel. That's going to be the type of messaging. We pick the different kinds of channel sequencing, social, phone. We also pick certain weeks we're going to skip because we don't want to fatigue them. We want to avoid that customer fatigue, that over communication fatigue. And also the timing between messaging. And what I've often found is the more senior they are, the more spread apart my messages have to be. The less senior they are, the less spread apart they are. But that's just my concept. I'm going to play with that. I'm going to measure that. And I'm going to use a tool like this so I could test which cadence strategy works best against which kinds of customers. I want to give you two more concepts. One of them is echo selling. You see on the top of this, you got the boat, which I call sea level, get it? Sea level executives. And then on the bottom, those mountains under sea are the managers who are on an org chart below the sea level people. Well, let's research so that we understand who are the sea level people to our managers, who are the managers to our sea level people. Let me tell you why. If you actually reach out to either party and start to pitch to them, best case scenario, they will tell the other person because they see each other in meetings. So they'll say, I just spoke to somebody from the XYZ company. And if the other person goes, oh, really? I've heard of them. I heard they're great. Well, that means that you've reached the people who influence the buyer. If you talk to the manager and you get that person to repeat your sales pitch to the C-level person who eventually makes a decision, you've used that manager in a way, you've echoed your sales pitch through the manager. So first, let's research the org chart so we understand who's in the influence circle of everybody that we want to reach. Let's create messaging that is repeatable. Not just sales pitching. Let's think in terms of what are the stats that they could repeat? What are the win stories, the use case stories? What are the infographics we could share with the data points? What are the metaphors we could use that help them in one word, one image, describe our service to somebody else? Because it's not just can we be effective with a sales pitch, can we get the people we talk to talk to their coworkers in a favorable way about us? And when we do, we'll spread the message. We're not trying to sell directly to these people. We're trying to get them when they're in a room, which they're going to be, or a virtual room in the pandemic era, and they're going to talk about things, they're going to talk about us. You know, if I reach out to 30 people in an organization and then a day later they're all in a meeting together, the odds of my name coming up are improved. If they think favorably about me, that's even a better conversation. But that more likely happens if I'm not trying to sell, I'm just trying to create the right messaging that instills them with confidence about me. So let's think about not selling, but creating confidence. Let's think about branding ourselves. Let's think like a marketer. Let's also think about developing our skills. I told you got to adapt and adopt. And so what I think you really want to do is you want to use this time to read. I want you to read books. People say to me, what books do you read? Read books about selling? I do. But you know the books I read about selling are psychology, body language, game theory, so I could understand forecasting. I listen to podcasts. I listen to webinars. Sometimes I have to do a webinar. So I find that by watching and listening to webinars of other people, I not only learn stuff, but I learn stuff about webinars and how to do them in case I ever have to do one. And maybe my webinar will be better because of that. And if you read and listen, you're halfway there, but you got to do one more thing you got to do. You got to practice doing things. You know, selling is not about what you know, it's about what you do. And a lot of times you do things over and over and over and over and over. It's a habit. And you think you're still doing it the perfect way, but you actually, over time, you're rounding a corner. You're not really thinking about what you're doing. When you do something for the first time, you're paying first-time attention to it. But you also don't always do things perfectly the first time. It has to be okay. You are always going to be better at doing the things that you do by habit. You have to be okay with being uncomfortable. You have to let yourself fail in the process of trying something new. But the combination, if you're never trying something new, if you're never uncomfortable with what you're doing, if you're not experimenting with something new, you're probably not only staying the same, you're getting worse. You're getting worse and worse and worse in a world that's changing around us. So let's read, listen, do if you really want to improve yourself. Or what did we talk about today? We talked about, in summary, developing a plan. Let's develop a plan. Let's think about our A list, our B list, our C list, our D list. Let's think about what we know, what our skills are, how good we are. Let's think about personal marketing, not just emails, but let's think about the combination of messaging across social media, emails, phone calls. Let's think about not just the messaging that we're sending, but how personalized our messages could be in terms of templates to different kinds of leads. Let's think about the cadence, how often we're going to reach people, and how no one cadence works for all leads. Nothing works that way. But if we could divide leads into categories, we could come up with winning cadence strategies against each category of lead. Let's surround our prospect with our echoed pitch. Let's not just go after one person. Let's go after all the people who influence them. Let's keep developing our skills. And if we do that, we're going to keep improving. I also want to remind you of two things. One is a lot of the concept I've talked about today, I talk about in my own podcast. It's a free podcast. It's on every podcast platform. I've designed it to be like a mini coaching session during your lunch break. So it's a little coaching, and I talk about echo selling and a lot of the concepts that we talked about today. And finally, I want to encourage you to contact me, follow us on our social handles, register for free to Finally Friday, which is a newsletter. It's free. Did I mention free? It's free. It's not just a newsletter filled with our articles. What we do is we know that people need to learn things on a wide range of subjects. We find that wide range of topics that we want you to know more about. We put that into our newsletter. But if you have any comments or questions, never hesitate to reach out to me, because I'm Steve Bookbinder. I'm always there for you. I'm your sales coach.